and a fellow of pain science. And that just means that I'm really passionate about helping people overcome pain. And I've been doing the PT for almost 35 years, so I am not a new kid in the neighborhood. And in addition to being passionate about helping people with pain, I also teach clinicians and I also speak at conferences because my mission is to help the world know that pain is not a life sentence. We have the science, we have the strategies that we can really help people in pain who've been struggling for years and even decades. I recently merged two websites, so the best places to find me are at jenuschold.com, and you can see my name, the spelling there. You'll probably have it in your show notes. And I'm very active on LinkedIn as well, so feel free to connect with me there too.
Perfect. So let's start right at the genesis of this, Jen. How did you get started in this and why?
Physical therapy or pain?
Let's do both.
All right, because they're a little related. So I am the youngest of a very big family. I have eight brothers and sisters, and the three other sisters, one was a nurse and two are physical therapists. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I went to college. So I'm like, PT sounds good. And I had other plans after college, but then I fell in love with physical therapy. And in my very first job, I had this nice older gentleman who was just debilitated with pain. And back then we called it reflex sympathetic dystrophy. Now it has a fancier name, chronic regional pain syndrome. I did not know how to help this man. I was kind, I did the best I could, but as a very green PT with no knowledge in pain science, I didn't know how to help him. And it kind of just stayed with me. And then 10 or 12 years ago, I got exposed to Adrian Lowe, who is one of our leading pain neuroscience researchers, and I was immediately hooked. I did a 6 month program with him. I did the fellowship with him. And now I teach pain neuroscience education with that group. And they also invited me to be the lifestyle medicine program director because health and pain, the strategies are quite similar. It's just how do we integrate it for each unique individual?
And I think that's the key that it shouldn't be missed is that each person has their own journey on this path, and we can give them general information and a baseline, but some things may work for some people and some things may not. Would that be an accurate thing to say?
That is 100% accurate. And I like to toss out this little fun fact because we sometimes get really caught up in the why do I have pain? Why? When the fact is your brain, well, let's make this question train. How many pieces of information do you think your brain processes every second?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. Can I call a friend for
Sure.
some help?
Go right
No,
ahead.
I'm
Call a friend.
joking. No, I think my guess would be less than 100.
11 million.
There you go.
So if we are experiencing pain and we just, cut our finger slicing open a bagel, yep, we're pretty sure what's going on. But so many people struggling with pain, they haven't had an injury or a surgery, and they get caught up in that cycle of why, versus we're never going to know because those 11 million pieces of information, your brain is prioritizing protecting you. And so pain is actually protection. What's more important is to understand how pain works for you in general, and then let's tap into the dozens of strategies that we have to help ease your nervous system, decrease your pain, and get you back to the life you want.
And out of that, like 11 million, there could be so many of them that maybe don't. Could there be some that don't stay with us, or some that maybe are impacting us in ways that we can't even comprehend at the moment?
Yes, 100%. Because your brain has a memory of every single solitary thing you've ever done. And if you need to bring it up for some reason as a point of protection or just a memory, your brain will do that. That whole adage of, you never forget to learn how, you never forget how to ride a bike, it's very true. Those patterns are in there. And so people that have experienced significant pain as a child or even as an adult, the environment could bring that sensation or awareness back. Culture, the tone of voice of someone talking to them, which is why we have to look at that big complex word, biopsychosocial, because all of these things play in. Maybe an easier example for your crowd to understand is if somebody gets hurt skiing and then every February their shoulder hurts. Well, they haven't re injured their shoulder every February. It's that their nervous system is on higher alert because last February it was cold. We were in Vermont and we had this happen. So the nervous system remembers. But the beauty of pain neuroscience education is when you understand that and you have strategies to change that, that's when everything changes. And then a February comes and you're like, "Oh, no big deal." The next February comes and maybe it doesn't happen at all.
So that would be like a reminder of what has happened from our past, even though we're not re-injuring it or it's happening again. It's just a reminder of what has happened.
It's not a reminder, it's that your nervous system perceives the threat. And when it receives this information, it has to very quickly determine, are we safe or are we not? And your brain doesn't know the difference between a real or a perceived threat. And it is always going to choose to protect you. And so that's why it's really important that we understand that sometimes our nervous system, especially with chronic pain, is doing its job too well. How do we rein in this beautiful protection? And the way we do that is by helping people understand how it works, and then the other two top strategies are we need to get them moving. Movement is essential for those with pain. And then what can we do to power down the nervous system? We need to calm the nervous system down, get them moving, help them understand. And the science is super strong that this is how we help people with pain.
So what could then be some of the obstacles that people face when it comes to identifying the pain and moving forward with it?
There's a lot of myths around pain. We are currently, most of us, clinicians and humans alike, operating on a model that is 370 years old. And so we really have to bring ourselves up to date. And one of the biggest myths is that all pain is bad. And pain is not bad. And think about it for a moment. If you put your hand on a hot stove and you don't feel it, that is a big problem, isn't it?
I would say yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, pain is protection. The challenge becomes if 3 months, 3 years later, you're still feeling that same burning sensation in your hand. Then we have to get more curious because another one of our myths is that if I have tissue damage, then I will have pain. Or if I have pain, I will have tissue damage. They go together, but they're really two separate things. And a really good example, way to understand this is have you ever had a bruise on your body and you didn't know where it came from?
Yes. Yeah. Even cuts sometimes too.
Exactly, tissue damage. But your brain didn't care. It didn't perceive a threat. Maybe you were having a blast mountain biking or trimming the bushes or whatever it was you were doing, but the brain didn't perceive a threat. Therefore, no pain. And we also have people who have debilitating pain, and their scans are beautiful because tissues and pain don't go together. And all pain is real. That's so important. All pain is real. I want all of your listeners to know that we have never, ever, ever scanned fake pain. So, anyone that gives you an idea that you're making it up, that you're exaggerating, that you're over the top, I respectfully encourage you to just walk away and find another friend or provider, whatever it needs to be.
Would that then apply to the different types of pain? Let's say, for example, emotional pain, physical pain, and mental pain. There may not be the physical damage, but like you mentioned, the good and the bad, and sometimes the body doesn't perceive it at that moment as pain. Can that apply to other areas of your life as well?
There's a lot in that. Pain is always a physical and an emotional experience. So, a good example is let's just say you stub your toe, you're on an amazing vacation, you're gonna feel it, right? It hurts to stub your toe, and pretty quickly your nervous system knows how to handle that. Let's say you stub your toe because you tripped over your kid's hockey bag that you've asked them to move 372 times, and then you fall flat on your face because you then slipped on a banana peel. Now, there's a lot of different emotions going on there versus the first incident when you're on vacation. And those emotions can and do impact pain because they always go together. So, we also have to get more curious about the experience of the pain because, again, people think if I injure myself or had surgery, that makes sense that I have pain. But about a third of people who experience pain, physical experiences of pain, have never had a surgery. And so we know that emotional overload and stress overload can create the pain experience in your shoulder, in your knee, in your back. And the same is true with health. People that have IBS and fibromyalgia and even heart disease, a lot of this can be traced back to a nervous system that is highly, highly sensitized.
One example that I thought of when you said that was, let's say, from an emotional aspect and mental fitness, since we talked about that earlier, you and I, someone who's overworked 10, 12, 14, 16 hours, and their body begins to react to this, right? It's in a lot of ways an emotional response. Sorry, a lot of ways they're having an emotional response because they may be angry at their body because it's not holding up for them to do what it wants them to do, which is work these long hours. And as you mentioned, it's both physical and emotional. So if that's the case for a lot of people in that example I gave, how does then that impact their mental fitness for them to be able to carry forward in their lives?
You ask really good questions. So, have you ever heard of the two wolves story?
I haven't.
I love this story. This is really a nice little overview of mental fitness. And I think it goes back to the Cherokee Indian tradition, where a grandfather is talking to his grandson, and he talks about there are two wolves constantly at battle in our mind. And we have so quote unquote good wolf, which is peace and love and connection and kindness and compassion and all those wonderful things. And then we have the quote unquote bad wolf, which is guilt, regret, negativity, anger, frustration, shaming, all those things. And the little boy looks at his grandfather and he says, "Well, Grandpa, which wolf wins?" And the answer is the wolf that you feed. So, this is really powerful from the perspective of mental fitness, and it ties in with pain because thoughts are actual nerve impulses. So, what we think informs our reality. And we actually have these things in our brain called mirror neurons. And what's fascinating is when you watch someone, say, play basketball, the same parts of your brain are going off as if you're actually playing basketball. So when you have a 12 or a 14-hour day, to come back to your example, and you get angry about that, you're actually creating physiologically more inflammation, more potential for illness, and more potential for pain. And if we go even a little bit deeper with that, we are not intended to work 12 to 14-hour days. So, in your example, we're getting angry at our body when we're actually asking too much of it. And our body and nervous system is so amazing that it's like, hey, you're exhausted. Hey, you're angry. We're giving you information. What are you going to do about it? In your example, the person's angry at their body, but maybe we can look back and say, okay, what inputs can I give my nervous system and body so I can be more productive and highly functioning without burning the bridge and ending up with pain or illness?
To continue the story they shared, they're angry at the wolf that they're feeding.
Yes, negative thoughts become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Positive thoughts become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And who gets to choose? It's always the individual.
What do you think then is the trap between the two when someone tends to feed the other wolf, which is the negative energy, while not paying attention to the positive one, and they continue to get angrier and other emotions, which continues to feed this, and now they're trapped. So why do you think they get trapped in that?
Well, we're going to start and go back to 11 million pieces of information per second, and the brain's job is to protect you. And so, how can I try and say this simply? Um, Everything that we experience in our life informs what we do in the present moment. And the truth is, people have had hard lives. They've had hard experiences growing up, and we develop a protective strategy. So maybe you tend to avoid situations because that's how you survived an abusive home. Or maybe it worked better for you to control situations because something else was going on growing up and you had to be the one taking care of everyone. So in the mental fitness framework, these strategies that we use to survive when we are younger actually represent our greatest strengths. But then, as we get older, our nervous system is still holding on to it. Anger becomes the go to, avoiding becomes the go to. And so that's how we get stuck in those patterns. And the more we run that pattern, the stronger it becomes. Think about if you have this nice green grass and you walk across it once or 10 times, no big deal. But if you walk across it 100 times, 1,000 times, suddenly you're going to have a new worn pattern, right? So these negative emotions can create very strong patterns, as can the positive emotions. So, both with pain science and mental fitness, we are trying to create new patterns of safety, function, productivity, and easing the nervous system so that we can quiet those negative patterns. And in both cases, it starts with awareness. If you get angry and you just blow off the handle, there's no awareness. But once you understand, oh, if I can recognize that I'm angry, that's actually a beautiful first step. If you can recognize that you're feeling pain and you're safe, right? If somebody's pounding your hand with a hammer, you're not safe. We need to do something about it. But if you just stand up and you have back pain, we know you're safe. Can we get more curious about what that pain, what is that information, and more importantly, what can we do to ease it and create safety?
When you
Not sure if that
mentioned
was
the
simple enough, but I tried.
No, that was excellent. When you mentioned create new safety, I was looking at childhood experiences. I was thinking of my own when you're saying that, and then those who I work with, and many times what was used to protect us, the avoiding, the isolation, as we begin to grow into our adulthood, we realize those same protections in a lot of ways are a prison,
Yeah.
right? Now we're avoiding, now we are awkward in social interactions. Now, if someone wants to love us in a way that maybe we always want to be loved as children, we begin to push it away because we know the dysfunction, we don't know the healthy. The isolation, same thing. And when it becomes painful from a physical sense, when it comes painful from an emotional sense, we didn't ever develop the tools maybe to help us
Right.
along the ways, right? So for those who are now maybe my age, your age, and they're like, oh, I get it now. This is what's causing what I'm going through. How do we then meet them where they are and help them come out of that?
That awareness is a number one. And I love the pain science approach. Pain neuroscience education is our term because it always starts with education. So let's just say that tomorrow somebody asked you to become a cardiothoracic surgeon and you have three open heart surgeries tomorrow. How would that go?
I would feel bad for those who I'm doing the surgery on.
Right. Do you think you might have a little stress or anxiety because you don't know what you're doing?
I'm stressed just thinking of being in that situation right now. So yes, I would definitely have stress.
Okay, so thank you. I hope that your listeners are picking up that you are having a physical and emotional stress response to words that you heard. The same happens with pain, the same happens with mental fitness. So, this is why, in both mental fitness and pain science, understanding is the critical first step. And it's very cool. We have brain scans, fMRI studies showing that when we teach people about pain, they have less pain. And it's super cool because we know it works even better than some pain medications. So that awareness and education is super important so that we can then understand what's our starting point and then where are you ready to start to make change. Yes, movement is critical. Someone might be ready to go for a 20-minute walk, but most recently, I had a woman who her family was tremendous. They helped her set this up. She could only walk 5 feet before she had to take a break because of her pain. Now, that's not very functional. However, the gift of taking a break every 5 feet was that she wasn't quite literally screaming in pain on and off all day long. So that's where your comment about how do we meet them where they are. We meet them where they are by doing a very thorough evaluation and getting super clear with them on what's important to them and their goals and their future.
And when you mention what's important to them, they're defining what's important is not something that we would tell them that's important.
100%.
The reason I wanted to say that is because sometimes we project as human beings, right? Jen, this is important to you, and and you're like, well, not really. Well, I think it is, so of course it has to be important to you. And instead of maybe being helpful, and in a lot of ways, those people are trying to be helpful. They're just being helpful from their lens. We actually are causing them a little bit harm because maybe what we're telling them is important is not what they need to hear at that moment. And you mentioned words can cause people stress and then they can have a physiological reaction to it, right?
If those words are important to us and not our client, are they important
Good question.
when we're talking about our client? Which is part of the beauty of this approach too, because I talked about powering down the nervous system or calming the nervous system. We have more than 20 evidence-based ways to do this that are not medications, not surgeries, and not injections. So it's beautiful. If I have a client who's like, no, thank you on yoga. All right, cool. I'm interested in nutrition. Let's do it. Oh, I really know this great acupuncturist. And so this is where it really becomes all about them.
I love that when you said that it becomes all about them because that's what it's supposed to be about. Like your clients, what is it that they need? And it's through their perspective, their lens. When you mention words causing people to be like, when an example of me performing surgery the next day and I was visibly sweating. How impactful then can someone's peer group be on their physical health?
Huge. I'm going to give you a personal example here. Can I do that? So, unrelated to pain neuroscience, I'm now applying these same strategies for people navigating divorce. And I did all of the things that I do with my pain clients for myself for my third mediation because we'd had two miserable ones. And I had mantras, I did lots of exercise, all the things. And so the day before or 2 days before, I was out to coffee with a bunch of people. And this one woman looks at me, she goes, you cannot mediate with that type of personality. You're going to lose. And I was just like, I felt it. Like I felt the anxiety. And in the past, I would have stayed because I felt guilty or whatever. And I just respectfully got up and left because I knew that wasn't going to support what I was trying to accomplish in the mediation. So I hopefully that's a good example to explain that to you.
It is. And I wish that was something that many people could do. I know it takes a sense of courage, and you've probably done the training and you through your experiences and your insights, you're able to do that. For the person who's still consumed by the guilt and the shame, thinking, oh, if I leave, I'm being disrespectful, who rather stay because you have to balance which one you want, right? Is it the pain that you're feeling is more important to you, or maybe the sense of what they would think? Do you see some people struggle with those choices when they have to maybe remove themselves from an environment that is no longer serving them from a pain perspective?
Just had this conversation with a client last week because she was hesitating to ask her daughter to do something with her for some holiday. And I was like, okay, so what's keeping you from asking her? And she's like, well, I don't want to pressure her to do something and she's busy. And I said, well, I said, you don't actually get to own her responses. If you speak to her in a loving, connected manner and your intention is connection, you don't have to own, and in fact, you can't. It's just so much of a mental burden to try and own and anticipate everyone's responses. Our responsibility is to show up with kindness, connection, and lack of judgment, and all of that. And then other people get to own their responses. And she, in the end, she's like, you know what? I will ask her. And then there was a follow-up question. I said, and what if she says no? Can you be okay with that? And she admitted earlier she wouldn't have been okay with no, but then by the end, she's like, yes, I can be okay with no.
Is that a hard decision for people to make, to be okay with that?
It's a process. Now, if this had been my first or second session with her, I don't think she would have been ready for it. But it was our eighth or 10th session. And so it's this repetition, right? We talked about the path in the grass. She is getting this information and she is getting curious about her mental fitness and her pain and how she shows up. She's creating new pathways in her brain. So it's easier to access it now than it was 2 or 3 months ago.
I'm glad that she's on that journey. It's a journey that I had to go on, and I know it wasn't an easy journey. You gave the example, the analogy of the path in the grass. Mine was probably more of a zigzag than a straight path, but I eventually got there. And when I did get there, I was relieved. And it's interesting. You mentioned how it's such a part of our life, and you made the joke earlier that it's all the oleologies into one, right? And I remember when I was going through my journey and I was walking that path in the grass, when I ultimately was able to come through it and realize what I wanted, and I was able to soothe some of the pain and eventually get rid of it, my perspective in the world changed. It was like the curtains in the house was the windows were open and the sun was shining in. I can see so much clearer now. And I share that for those who may think sometimes that, well, it's separate. Yeah, you could talk about physical health, spiritual health, emotional health, and mental health separately, but it's four pillars of health, of fitness, right? It's combined. With the clients that you have dealt with, or maybe yourself, have you seen um, the healing or the working to maybe reduce some of the pain and overcome it positively impacting different areas or other areas of their life? And if so, how so?
Just yesterday, I got a text from a gentleman who I think I worked with him 5 or 6 years ago. And he was in his 30s at the time, and he had had a very traumatic injury to his hand. Lots of circumstances, right? We've got all the psychology and the sociology, but I would consider his rehab was downright abusive. The way they pushed him to rehab his hand. This, by the time I saw him, this was impacting his entire life, his relationships, his ability to work, and he wasn't really even able to sit still. Like it wasn't just his hand, his whole body had kind of joined in this hypersensitivity. And he leaned in, very curious, wanting to understand what was going on with him. And we integrated all of the different pillars and the different strategies that he chose to do. And he got better. And every few months, he'll just write to me and say, I just want to tell you how good I'm doing. And yesterday, he's like, I don't need to come and see you, but I wanted to let you know what happened. And it was so cool because he was on vacation with his wife and kids, and his kids threw him a frisbee. And in the past, he probably would have been scared to death of the frisbee, but he literally dove for the frisbee. And his kids are like, oh my God, dad's dead. And then up goes the frisbee because he caught it. And he was so excited, and he had zero symptoms. So, yes, it works.
When you hear stories like that, or you get the client feedback, or you just know that you're making a difference, what kind of emotions do you feel and how does that impact you?
Every time I hear from him, because he actually did a video with me and he's just so appreciative, like just tears of gratitude. It makes all of the naysayers, it makes all of that go away because there are people who do not understand pain science, therefore they're very judgmental about pain science. And every individual that I can help guide them to get their life back, that is a win. Part of the reason I want to be on more podcasts is to get the message out there in a broader manner. But each individual human who gets their life back, that is a win for me. And it feels good. But it's not about me. Let's remember that. It's not about me.
You're making a difference one person at a time, and you're saving one mind at a time, one mind, body, and soul, because this is something that is very, very important. And I know earlier you mentioned myths and some things you wanted to clarify. When it comes to connecting mental fitness and chronic pain, are there anything else that you'd like to clarify in regards to the connection of the two?
Hmm. I like to tell my clients that we need to treat your body in order to benefit your body and your brain. We need to treat your brain in order to benefit your body and your brain. And they're just not able to be separated. Somebody who is so anxious and or we can end up with a lot of depression, the symptoms for depression and chronic pain are very similar. And what's very exciting is that the treatments are also very similar. And so there's just so much crossover between pain and health and illness and disease. And I really want people to know that there are strategies out there that are accessible. They are not expensive. Many of them are free. I mean, it's a choice in the grocery store, right? We can choose Honey Nut Cheerios or we can choose a banana and granola, whatever it is. It's not the best example. But there's so much choice when we are feeling trapped in pain. If people can just see a crack of choice, that would be helpful.
I spoke to someone a couple of days ago about choice, and in some situations, choice is what's leading a lot of people to unfortunate situations because they have so many choices to do the wrong thing and not necessarily the right thing. And that's based on what would be right or wrong for them. I know a lot of times we can speak in general, but then I also said that, but the beautiful thing about choice, to your point, Jen, is that instead of it only being Pepsi or Coke, and the person says, I don't like either, give me a ginger ale, there is that ginger ale, right? You mentioned yoga. I do yoga in the morning and I do the stretches. That works for me, breath work. Some other person may look at me like, Turin, are you really sitting on the ground? Isn't it dirty? I'm like, no, I clean my house, calm down. So, right? But for them, affirmations may be good. For another person, journaling, right? Like having these options available, and you made it so perfectly clear, the awareness that you have the options to find something that can work for you. Is that still a struggle for someone to be able to find what would work for them? And if so, how can we help them to pinpoint what's going to work for them?
Yeah, remember that Claritin commercial? Like the Claritin clear? Like it looks like this great image and then suddenly they clear the screen. That's partly what we're having to do because there are nine different parts of your brain that are involved in every pain experience, but they all have other more important jobs to do. It might be digestion, it might be muscles and movement, it might be remembering your dentist appointment on Tuesday. But if those areas are blurry, then they're not functioning as well. And that's part of the importance of the education as our base point. So when they understand, we're actually starting to clear those parts of the brain. And then now they can tap in. They have the brain power, so to speak, to get curious about some movement or get curious about journaling. And so that's why the education is so very important. There's something else I was going to say, and I don't remember. What was the rest of your question?
Actually, your answer, Jen, just made me have another question when you mentioned that
Go for it.
education is key. In relationships, let's say you have two people, heterosexual relationship, you have let's say husband and wife. One person is going through chronic pain and is impacting their mental fitness. As a partner, you want to do everything possible for this person. I can help you, I can save you, I can make you feel better. But I think we both know that you can't do for others what they don't want to do for themselves, right? You can't make someone want to do something. You can help them along, but ultimately they have to do the choice. For those who are in a romantic relationship, have you seen in your experiences, does that have an impact? Or what kind of impact does that have on the relationship when someone's going through the chronic pain and they're really struggling to identify how to overcome it?
This is one of the ologies. This is where culture and sociology come in. And whether it's a spousal relationship or a friend relationship or even a clinician client relationship, I cannot want to help my client more than they want to help themselves. I cannot want to help my spouse more than he or she wants to help themselves. And so that's really important because if we talked about this earlier, if we push our agenda, no matter where it's coming from, we're actually going to push them further into their story because we are not meeting them where they are. When it comes to relationships, there's two ways it can go. Someone can be overly supportive, almost enabling less activity and less activity, or they can be punitive. So, an example might be let's just say the wife has back pain and the husband comes home. The punitive husband is like, oh my God, why isn't dinner on the table? And there's actually a story of a woman who would work so hard during the day to get dinner on the table. And then she would go into her bedroom and cry because she had so much pain. And she's somebody, a great PT was able to help her. So then that's the punitive side. But then we have the enabling side. This is the husband that comes home and say, no, 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 you can't be lifting that. No, 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 you can't be doing that. When we really need to find this place of empowering the individual. And my favorite word is nudge. We don't want people doing no activity because it actually sensitizes the nervous system more. We don't want them just busting on through. We call that a boom and a bust. It also sensitizes the nervous system more. What we want is the ability to find that place. What activity is your nervous system ready for that you won't flare? Are you ready to do two loads of laundry today and two in 2 days rather than five all at once? Cool, let's start there. Are you ready to walk 5 minutes instead of pushing through for an hour and then paying for it for 4 or 5 days? Let's start there. And I've literally had people start walking with 2 minutes. This is another woman. She sent me pictures. I think she was in Austria hiking just the other day, and she started walking with 2 minutes.
I love that example because some people can just get trapped between the two, like you said. They would come home, why is the laundry not done? Why is the house still a mess? But that person is struggling. And then the other side, you have someone coming home, no, 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 I can do all this, and the person in some sense is kind of taking advantage because they are not going to do anything, or they're being soothed by the other person. To your point, they're not taking a first step to say, okay, I want to do better because this person is enabling them not to do better. Would that be a form of manipulation in the second example then?
I am not a counselor. I am not a psychologist. So, putting that disclaimer out there, that's a really interesting question. I think we would need to understand more about why the spouse is tapping into those enabling behaviors. Because honestly, what if it is coming from a place of pure intention? I love you so much, and I really don't want you to hurt your back more. So please let me do the laundry, let me do the everything, versus I don't want you to have your voice. I want to stomp you down. So, no, you can't do anything. I think it comes down to intention. What's the intention of that spouse? Now, the enabling still isn't good, but when we understand the intention, then I think we can introduce ways to make a change.
I will agree with that, and that would be my answer. As well is what's the intention? Is a person truly coming from a place of care? Then yeah, they want to be helpful. If it's a place of control, then it's something totally different. And I can see from a male perspective that we want to be there to make our partner feel safe and secure. So when we see them struggling or we see them in pain, we don't necessarily want to see them that way. And vice versa. I'm pretty sure there's a number of women out there that they don't want to see their partner in pain if there's something that they can do about it. But then, and I can just hear the whispers in my ear as I'm thinking about this now. There's some there, well, Terrain, I come home and I do everything. I go to work, I do all this. I was like, well, my question to you as I take off my podcaster hat and put on my coaching hat is, have you had this conversation with your partner? Are you communicating what you feel and what you think? And the answer is usually what? No.
And they are choosing to do everything at home. They are still choosing it. I thought of a good patient example. Can I give you an example of how very well meaning parents went overload? This was probably 10 or 15 years ago. And the kid was maybe 12 or 13, and he had just strained his groin playing soccer, no big deal. And I saw him a couple times at home. This is when I was treating people in their homes, and he wasn't getting better. And I couldn't quite figure this out. And so I was like, hey, are you going for walks? No. Are you doing any running? No. Going to practice? No. I'm like, so what are you doing? He's like, nothing. And I was like, oh. So I talked to his parents. I'm like, hey, why isn't, whatever, Tom doing anything? He's like, well, he can't do anything because he's going to get hurt. And I said, oh, well, is he taking the dog out for a walk? No. Like this kid was literally doing nothing. So then I said, okay, let's get him out walking. Let's get him out for a regular walk, take the dog. And I said, oh, by the way, mom and dad, how often are you asking Tom about his pain and how he feels? They're like, all the time. And I was like, okay, we're also going to stop asking Tom how he feels. And you know what? That was the last time I saw him. Not because they were angry, because I saw them in other social settings, but because that insight that mom and dad cared so much that they were actually fueling his pain and removing his activity was really holding him back.
That's an interesting point because then everyone was involved in what was going through with that child. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Wow. And did they realize the role that they were playing until you brought it to their attention?
They did not. They did not. You know that, when if you're, it's a silly statement and I don't like it when doctors say it. You're like, oh, when I squeeze my hand, it hurts. And they say, well, don't do that. So on one hand, there's a little bit of sense to that, right? Because if you're squeezing your hand every 15 seconds, and you're getting pain, you're fueling that up. I have somebody right now, actually, he's so good at nudging, but right now he is in such a flare that I was like, we are not nudging. How far can you walk and not cause symptoms? And we started at 5 minutes and we got down to 30 seconds. I'm like, right now, we need you to walk so that your system feels good and it doesn't go into that protection mode. So for the last 3 days, that's all he's doing is walking 30 seconds at a time when he can, right? When you have a wife and kids. But it's this idea of meeting them where they are, nudging and not pushing too hard.
And that seems to be like the theme, right? Meeting the person where they are. And the example you gave from a client perspective, is it important to them, right? Because it's always about what is going to work for them. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we have to go a little bit beyond that is what is important and best for their nervous system. Because there are people who want to run 5 miles no matter what, and their nervous system isn't ready for it. So then we have to find this place of getting them and their nervous system on the same page of what they're willing to do. I had another guy, this was a long time ago. He said I can only afford to come see you for 1 2 hour session. So we call it the fire hose approach. I just blasted him with pain science. And this man had gone through a big weight loss journey. So he was working out 2 hours a day because he was so afraid to gain weight. But he paid for it with constant pain. That's it. I knew nothing. 2 hours. Let me know how you do. Never heard from him. Ran into him at a social event a year or two later, and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, "Great. I am 95% better." And he doesn't blast through exercise constantly anymore.
I wonder, can sometimes it be that simple where it's just stopping what is causing you this pain, but first comes awareness and first comes the responsibility. Can it be in some cases that simple?
In some cases, it can be that simple. So here's my example with my clients. I'm like, if every time you drive down, I don't know, K Street, there's always broken glass, and 9 out of 10 days you get a flat tire, does it benefit you to keep driving down K Street when you know that L Street never has broken glass? It's a choice. You can keep doing the same thing over and over again, and your system will flare. You will reinforce those patterns. Your system will become more protective, which becomes more pain. And we're just in this cycle. What we want to do is we want to give you the tools to get off that exit. Let's get off the exit ramp of this roundabout of pain.
It's like someone driving down First Street and there's always traffic, and the next day they drive down there, they're like, oh my God, there's always traffic. Well, what did you expect?
Right. And when there's traffic, you have the choice of getting angry and all worked up, which doesn't help anything or anyone, or there's traffic. It can be an acceptance, a statement, or it can be the world is ending because there's traffic.
Jen, I want to ask you one final question, if I may. This question, I want to give you three wishes, and you can wish for three things that everyone or that you would want people to know about this one question. What are three things you wish people knew about the power that they have to make the changes in their life when it comes to pain and why?
What are the three things I want people to know about the power they have when it comes to chronic pain and why? Funny you use the word power because I have taken the three keys that we know, the research is clear, helps people with chronic pain, and I've made it a simple little acronym and it's Empower You. The E stands for education, the M is movement, and the P is powering down the nervous system. So, what I want people to know, I want them to know that pain is not a life sentence. It doesn't define you, it is a part of your story, but your story can always evolve. And it begins with curiosity and education so that you can make the changes you want to get to where you want to be.